Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Breakfast Analysis. Today we're going to be talking about BDS roster moves. Just going to be a quick little video here today discussing the news of the day. And BDS have apparently made a roster move. It's not official. The orgs haven't tweeted it out, but it's on ESL, and usually teams don't go back on moves once they happen on the ESL webpage. So we're going to treat it as confirmed. Here's what went down. BDS have dropped Panics as well as their coach Fisker, and they've picked up LMs, who most recently played on Team Secret. Community is very upset about this one, of course, because this is the second time in a row that Panics has qualified for the Invitational, then been cut right before he was supposed to play in it. I guess it's not right before, but you know what I mean. It's really unfortunate for the guy, and you can tell, I mean, you can empathize with him, empathize with the community who are quite upset about this. He's pretty much the only good player from his country, right? He's Swiss, of course, so he's got a lot of, like, fans locally that are pretty loyal towards him, and then just, like, all around, he's a pretty well-liked guy in the community, so the fact that he's had to suffer through this twice is really unfortunate for him. Before we, like, talk about the merits of this roster change, I want to say, like, please don't try to, like, I don't like what's been going around recently with types of roster moves like these where people just like vilify the other team. I mean, to some extent, I get it, and I think it can be good to have villains, right? You've got a team that walks into, or like qualifies for something big and then drops like a bunch of players off their roster. You could talk about like E United, of course, coming into North American Pro League. On one hand, it's fun to sort of paint them as the villain and be like, all right, these are the bad guys now, let's all cheer against them. But like, definitely, I think people go too far sometimes. It's a competitive environment. I think teams should be free to make whatever roster moves they want. As long as roster moves aren't locked, then hey, let them do it. If they think it's going to make them better, then that's what they're going to do. Ultimately, we can discuss whether it will make them better. We can have our own opinions on whether these roster moves are a good idea or a bad idea. Clearly, though, in this case, BDS thought it was the right move for them. We got to respect that. We'll see how it goes. But that doesn't mean we can't also discuss it and maybe say that it's not a good move. So with that all said, is it a good move? It's hard to say, right, with these two players being swapped in and out. I'm going to give it a soft yes. I guess I like this move. I don't love it. I like it. Let's just start at the beginning, right? Let's take a look at Panics, how they've done so far. Obviously, this is a shocking move to most people because BDS have found a lot of success recently. Not necessarily at like OGA, but throughout the invite qualifiers, they just won those. So that was pretty impressive by them. They just made it to Pro League, which is a big step for a lot of teams, including BDS. So it is shocking they would make a move at this point. I think if you're going to make a move on BDS at this point in time, probably removing Panics is the right one, as much as I hate to say it. Did really bad at OGA. That's got to be like the driving force behind it. He just seems to have trouble staying alive. That's a big problem with a lot of players you see getting dropped off these top rosters. Just really low survival rates, even on games where they're winning. And when they're losing, it's like it's amplified to a much worse extent. In the invite qualifiers, he did fine overall, but like lower on the scoreboard than most of his teammates. And again, those deaths were really racking up. Not necessarily opening deaths, but it's apparent when a player just dies over and over and over again in rounds, especially without getting too much in return. So I get it. I think that probably he was the one on the chopping block if you were going to make a move. He did good in Challenger League. I think what really hurt Panics was they started playing against better teams. In Challenger League, Panics was kind of known for being really good on the Capitao, and he utilized the Capitao well. He got a lot of work done with the Capitao. He really had like a good role when he could attack with the Capitao on BDS. But when they moved into OGA, they moved into invite quals, they started playing against better teams, and these were teams that had a lot of VODs available for BDS. So what Liquid, Secret, and like Vitality all did when they went up against BDS, they just target bans the Capitao, and it really like we started to see Panic struggle a lot once we started to see the Capitao get banned out against him. It's unfortunate. It can be tough when you sort of have a role and then like the whole community starts target banning your role. You need to adapt. You need to be able to find some other use for yourself on the team. And certainly they gave Panic some opportunity to try that all throughout invite qualifiers. He was kind of going through a couple of different roles, right? He played some Nomad, some Thatcher, some Sledge. But none of those were really roles that the team needed filled. I think Reinshiro filled a lot of those same roles. RXD as well, another player who was, I think, filling some of those roles just as well. RXWD, excuse me. So maybe they felt like the Panics didn't really bring a whole lot else to the team. I don't necessarily think he was doing so bad that it was like, he's a problem, we got to cut him. I think it was sort of just like BDS looking at the roster and saying, you know what? He's maybe not contributing as much as he needs to with the Capitao being banned. And if you look at the last couple of matches, it is every single game Capitao gets banned. The only time Capitao doesn't get banned is if they're A, playing on a map where Capitao doesn't get played, such as Cafe or something, or B, they're playing against a team that also has a really good Capitao like Chaos. And in those situations, like having your own Capitao isn't that useful. So Panic's biggest strength got counterbanned a lot. And you take a look at LM's, he fits a similar-ish role. We can talk about him as a player, of course, was on Secret for a long, long time, ever since they got sponsored, and before that even. But he was removed from the main roster after OGA. He had a pretty horrible performance as well at OGA. Neither of these players did too well in Croatia. And he was immediately removed from the roster. Eunice filled in for Team Secret for the invite quals. He did pretty well. Secret's still kind of a question mark what they're going to be doing with their roster in terms of season 11, season 10, season 11 we're going into. I'm getting mixed up. Still a bit of a question for Secret. They don't know if they're going to keep Eunice. I think they've said that they want to, but it's up to him, and he doesn't know what he wants to do. So either way, like, LMs was cut off of that roster. He didn't play in the invite qualifiers. Before that, again, he did fine in like CL quals. He did fine in like the OGA quals, or CL quals, like CL in general, Challenger League season number 10. I'd say a little bit better than Panics, but again, it's comparable. So it doesn't seem like he's just this like shining star of a player, right? It doesn't look like this was BDS seeing LMs was a free agent, was like, we gotta have that. It feels more like they were like, well, maybe we don't really want Panics. I guess LMs like fits in kind of well too. He is a French player, so fits onto the French roster just well. It's now a five-man French roster for BDS, which is fine. They, of course, removed the Swiss player. Panics spoke French just fine, I'm sure, so that probably wasn't a factor. But LMs kind of fits in. He fills some of the roles that Panics filled. He can play some Capitao. He is a lot more support-heavy on defense, which I think was something that that they could use on BDS. You saw in Challenger League, he was playing a lot of that Maestro Echo type play. Secret were not afraid to let Echo through that ban phase, and then they would put LMs on the Echo, and he did quite well on that operator. Not really an op that's in BDS's rotation before now, so that's a nice addition to them. Kind of again stepping on Renshiro's toes, but Renshiro was already sort of having his toes stepped on when Panics wasn't able to play a lot of Capitao. So I think when you sort of mix in, like, Renshiro can move his roles around a little bit, LMs probably fits into the BDS roster pretty well, which is obviously a huge plus for them. On attack, he seems like a really flexible player, right? He can play some of those more supportive roles like Thatcher, like the Capitao when he needs to, but he's not afraid to like flex onto the Zofia and flex onto the Ashe. And I think that's really important for BDS. You talk about a team built around Shaiko, who's a pretty like frag heavy player, obviously on attack. He likes to play his Ashe, but he's not afraid to pick up the Habana either, and he's not afraid to play those hard roles. Those hard support roles whilst also getting a whole lot of frags. So I think when you're building a team around a player like Shaiko, such as BDS did, you kind of have to have a flexible attack. So I think LMs fits in well to this roster. I just don't know, A, that a roster move was necessary, and B, that LMs was like a huge gem that you just had to have, right? So I get it. I think that LMs was a good pickup. He was fine. He's going to fit into the roster pretty well. I think Panics wasn't that huge of a loss for them. They can probably do without him. I see reasons why they might wanted to have dropped him. It's not a hugely convincing roster move. And of course, the downside to any roster move is you're going to take time to adjust. You're going to have to get this rolling again. And there's always that possibility that, yeah, he was great in tryouts, but the chemistry actually isn't there. So it's a bit of a risk. I kind of don't mind that, though. Again, sort of flipping back and forth. That's why I'm very on this roster move. Because on the other hand, it's season 11 and there's no relegation. If you're going to take risks as a roster, this is sort of the time to take risks. This is the time to move players around. Because if you totally mess everything up, it doesn't matter. You're still going to be in Pro League next season. You know, like BDS could cut their two best players and then like pick up me and Uzumaki, and they'd still be in Pro League season number 12, right? It's season 11. There's no relegation in Europe. There's no relegation in North America. I think now is the time for teams to try stuff because there's no penalty, right? Maybe they'll do worse at the Invitational, and that's certainly not something that anybody wants to do. But I don't know. It's still, I would say, the time to make risks. And this isn't even that risky of a roster move again. Pretty low impact player being changed out for LMs, who's not going to come in and like totally revamp this roster. You know, he'll fit in slightly different than Panix did, similarly-ish, and I think he'll do a good job. Probably a good move by them. If they can adapt one off, if there's no huge catastrophe, then they'll probably perform just fine in the Invitational. They'll probably perform just fine in Pro League. I don't expect them to win either of those. I didn't really expect BDS to like get first place in either of those beforehand. I don't now. I think mostly people are just like sad for Panix in this situation, and I totally get that, and I totally relate to that, and I can sympathize with Panix because I do feel bad for him. But it's a competitive environment, and it's the way she goes sometimes, and it's unfortunate for the player, but it's the world we live in esports. So I guess those are my thoughts on the roster move. I didn't want to make this too long, too rambly. I hope you did enjoy. We just put out a top 10 list of the games last year in 2019, top 10 Rainbow Six matches. If you didn't watch that one, I'll link it down in the description. A lot more work went into that one. This has been a video that I've made in like half an hour of research and recording. So I want to do more of these type videos where I just sort of talk about things that come into my mind. And if you want that type of content, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and follow my Twitter down below, where I also ramble about random stuff. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.